Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of What's Next with V. This podcast is part of the podcast series in collaboration with TiEBangalore, wherein we get experts from various industries from this community, understand the sector or industry a bit more in depth, and figure out what's next in that space. Today we have with us a really special guest, Gaurav Agarwal. He's a 2X founder and a recruitment expert and an entrepreneur in residence. He's presently, as I mentioned, a 2X entrepreneur, so a founder at RecX, at the same time, CoFounders Planet. We'll definitely get to know more in this podcast and the recruitment space. I'm Vishal Ramaswamy, your host as always, the V in What's Next with V. Gaurav, jumping right in, pretty unique story. Uh, you graduated doing your CA in 2012, followed by a small stint as working globally, and then you directly jumped into entrepreneurship in the recruitment space. Recruitment space is pretty busy, pretty hectic, and pretty crowded as well. So it would be great. I think listeners out there would really like to know your story till date.
Hey Vishal, thank you for having me here. So if I move back to 2012, after I completed my chartered accountancy, I got an opportunity to work with companies like Unilever South Africa. So wherein I essentially got, a global perspective of how they look at placements, how they look at team building, how they look at people management, and how all the team members essentially contribute to a global company. Then, my parents are here out of Kolkata. So I moved back to Kolkata after 6, 7 months. And here I again went back to my job search. So while I was searching in the job requirements, I came across a consultant. And the consultant essentially that time it was quite, popular that you can essentially charge the candidates as well instead
True.
of not only charging the companies. In fact, I read in yesterday's newspaper another scam, and I was shocked to know that till date, similar kind of things go on, wherein people essentially charge the candidates for each of the successful placement. So I was duped by a recruitment consultant for 13,300
Oh,
rupees. And that's where it all began. I called my filthy rich friend. He was owning a 10,000 crore company that time. And I called him like, okay, let me start by providing you some manpower free of cost. So that's how the journey began. And while I was doing recruitment for his own company, I honestly did not probably know that I'll get into and land into the space till the time 4 or 5 months from that one jewelry company to another. And I went on recruiting for companies. And I figured out that, okay, I cannot charge the company candidates essentially because of my principle. But the only way to make money is from the companies, right?
true.
So companies are very happy to pay a month's salary, 8.33% of the gross annual salary for each of the successful placement. So that's how my journey began in 2013, February 11th. Okay. That's where I started into the recruitment space.
Got it. So, Gaurav, obviously that was your RecX, right? As you have named the organization, and you were obviously at that point in time till about 2020. I think you were doing mid and senior hiring for these SMBs and startups. So, would be
Right.
good to know few success stories out there. I believe as you mentioned, you started with your friends firm, and then till 2020, I think you're still continuing doing that. So, would be good to hear your RecX any success stories there at RecX?
Right. So when we began in 2013, right, after I exhausted my own contacts, I went on to do cold calling for multiple other companies. So I still distinctly remember this big five-star hotel where I called up the HR. So it was a cold call through the reception, went on to the HR desk. They clearly asked me, okay, how many hotels you deal with in our domain? Because this is a very clear question, which probably any professional will ask you
True,
whether you have worked for my competitors or not, right? So
true.
that's where I realized that it's very important to figure out a niche and work for all the companies in that particular domain, if that is a possibility. So Regex was not existing that time. That time the name was SMVA Consultants. And while we were working on SMVA Consultants, for close to 2013 to 18, we worked categorically for industries focusing on non-IT sector. Because that time multiple agencies were there very much inclined towards the IT domain, right? So we focused on, FMCG, FMCD, manufacturing, retail, US mortgage, financial services, banking and finances. So that's sort of became our core area. And we picked up a sector. Say one fine example might be we both are wearing, spectacles, right? So we picked up Titan I Plus as our first customer, and then went on to the other group companies or the other companies in the same sector like Lawrence and Mayo, GKB, Himalaya Opticals, so that it becomes easy for us as well to pitch them. Like, okay, we have worked for a similar company and we know what kind of requirements you might be having at your retail outlet. We have a strong database, and that's how we went on working and maintaining our industry niche in a way. So that's how 2013 to 18 went on becoming, we had a target of working for 500 plus companies. We touched that mark in 2018, and then we thought about expanding it to multiple other geographies, right? And when you think about expansion, right, so obviously each of the unit you requires a certain kind of a working capital to make it operational.
True.
Plus, most important is each of the units should be having a branch head as well, who should be having similar driven passion as the entrepreneur himself.
Absolutely.
So
True.
that challenge for some time, till the time we came across the concept of franchising, which was typically very popular in the food sector. Because in service sector, people were not aware, or rather not experimented way too much with the franchising. So we started by studying different models of franchising, and we started in July 2018 with our franchising concept. We started giving franchise. Okay. In 2 years, that's cut to 2020, in close to 18 months, we grew decently well. We grew at the rate of 1.6 franchise partner per month, and we sort of became the fastest growing recruitment franchise network of India. Okay.
Wow.
So in 2020, that is where we realized that, hey, we need to essentially take a backseat as well. And we also need to see what other things we can work on. So while I was all there in one of the franchise event, and one of the startups came up to me and said, hey, the services of a recruitment consultant is way too heavy for a startup who is yet to, begin, or who is just having an idea. So that's where I was like, hey man, I mean, he's right. The startup founder himself is right. We also need to carve a particular vertical for the startups and see if we can do something very dedicated for the startups as well. We are happily serving the large enterprises wherein, the compensation is coming after successful closures. But can we do also something about the startup domain? So all these things between these franchise expansion, serving the companies, parallelly also trying to make our franchise partner more and more successful. We were sort of, moving towards serving the startups as well, thinking about them. And that's where, we officially, a CEO also got into the picture, and Regex was sort of, the CEO took over the operations, the day-to-day expansion, and we got into the tech route as well. So that's sort of the journey from 2012 to 2020.
Awesome, Gaurav. I think in that journey, you've kind of figured out niche industries where you wanted to play, as you mentioned, right? In recruitment, it's the domain expertise or the sector expertise is important to get a foothold in that particular industry. I think you expanded decently. You had 500 plus companies. You built those franchisee models. I think you got a great experience in the recruiting space in the SMB and pretty much larger companies. From there, Gaurav, I think you moved into the startup space. I think the startup industry has grown leaps and bounds over the years, and we see a lot of unicorns, and minicons in the country. And I'm sure they are finding it difficult to recruit good talent regularly and at scale. So in 2020, I think you moved to your next kind of startup, since Regex was in a kind of a automated mode. You founded CoFounders Planet. So would be good to hear your story there from 2020 till now. The startups you're working with, is it a community? How are you kind of, matchmaking these leadership hires at these startups? Would be good to hear your story till date.
So Co-Founders Planet started with a Facebook group. We started with a Facebook community known as Co-Founders on Sweat Equity. So the agenda was very clear. You have an idea, you find a co-founder, you do not have to shell out money to a consultant also. And you can actually, through the community, you can just blast your requirement here. Like, okay, today I am a chartered accountant, I am looking for a techie. And this is my idea I am working on. So the community people only gel, interact with each other. And there was no, honestly, revenue model attached to it that time in 2020. But we formally incorporated a company, a private limited company, Co-Founders Planet Private Limited. We also got incubated by IIM Kashipur, eventually got into the top 30 of Department of Science and Technology as well. Because more and more people we were speaking to, right? And more people related with the idea and the problem statement. To the extent that multiple investors and VC told us, was in my 80 company portfolio, I have 5 to 6 founders wherein this service is needed, right? So, but our agenda was sort of clear that we don't want to get into an agency model out of it, right? We want to retain like a community. The first and foremost agenda was to drive more and more value for the community, give more and more to the community. So we were sort of going into events, holding college related fest, we are participating in those, helping them with the right kind of service providers. You know how a typical community functions, figuring out their problem statement and proposing a solution. That was the simple approach that was followed. So we were launching a poll on the community with 5 to 6 options, like, hey, I mean, what is your current problem? Is it finance and accounting? Is it finding a good team member? Or is it lead generation? Is it finding a decent service provider in digital marketing? Or, you write your own problem statement. So from there, from the poll result, we used to go in the market and figure out the best service providers for them.
Okay, nice.
So that was the approach for Co-Founders Planet very clearly. And 2022, so SMB consultants also, since it was going on and I moved to the capacity of advisor, here we saw another problem that my degree was getting related to the name SMBA consultants. And we started getting requests inbound from outside country as well. Like the story that we replicated in India, they wanted to replicate in countries like Bahrain, Qatar, etc. But somehow this we were not ready, to be brutally honest, because we felt that more and more technology intervention is needed, and we sort of thought of going back to the drawing board, because we achieved 40 franchises across 11 cities till then. But we thought, hey, I mean, right time to see the tech domain as well and see how we can work on the scalability aspect of it without hampering the growth. Okay. So that's where we thought of conscious effort was towards rebranding. So SMB consultants became Regex. Regex is recruitment exchange. Our effort was very much single tunnel focused towards making it a marketplace. So by marketplace, I mean we will aggregate the vacancies at a global level and we will distribute it to our recruitment partners. So that's how sort of the two important, ideally, when I look back, it's like every 2 years, there is sort of a milestone. 2018 franchise, 2020 Co-Founders Planet, 2022 rebranding from SMBA to Regex.
Correct. I mean, quite interesting story. I think your past 2, 3 years working at CoFounders Planet, I think you were understanding the challenges that founders faced and kind of doing a matchmaking of services. Um, obviously, leadership hiring, finding your co-founder, these are all very critical, especially for early stage founders. But it would be great to hear your thoughts since you've been speaking to all of them on a regular basis. Any message, any best practices that you could share with these early stage founders in the while they build their teams? What are the things they should look at?
So first, if you talk about team building, never consider hiring as a cost. That's a very big problem or mindset issue which most of the founders are having at a very early stage.
Hmm.
Hiring is always an investment. I'll tell you why. Right. So when you start building your team, each of the team member contributes to the top line, right? Say, in multiple companies, especially the sales driven company, I have seen that people are hiring and giving them targets, right? 7 to 10 times their compensation. So
True,
if you even land at 50% of the achievement, the cost that you're incurring for that manpower is essentially getting recovered, right?
true.
Another very critical aspect in terms of hiring is people focus too much on what these guys have not done, and what these guys there should be a clear ask and give on the table. So when you see ask and give, it's like, when you join me, this is my compensation structure, this is the growth trajectory which you can get, and this is what is the current status of the company. If there is a clear communication mismatch, right, the things go flat in a very, very short duration. So there is very important activity in terms of communication. It might happen through a job description or even through your conscious branding, even through your social handles, how your LinkedIn speaks, how the founder's LinkedIn speaks, how your Google speaks, the GMB, Google My Business. So in a way, we cannot see hiring in silo. Hiring team is the most critical part. I mean, if I ask one simple question, how many 100 crore companies have you found which are having very, very, say, 5 to 7 or 10 member team? It cannot happen that.
True.
So you need to have a bigger team and a structurized team as well to function in the right way and to achieve good numbers as well. So if you actually see the right numerology in terms of numbers, balance sheet figures, proportionate to the team members in multiple cases. So
Got it.
do focus on hiring that way.
Got it. Got some very interesting points. I think early stage founders out there, I think critical points that Gaurav mentioned. One, don't look at hiring as a cost, right? Look at it as an investment. I think that's critical. Second, Gaurav, that you mentioned, whatever I understood was keeping the expectations on both sides very transparent. Communicate as much as possible so that the person joining in, the leader joining in, and the founder who's hiring both are on the same page. And third, I think very important point that you mentioned was branding. It could be the startup branding, founder branding, overall employees who are there in the company, how active they're on LinkedIn and the other social media handles. I think that speaks volumes. I think if that is done pretty well, I think you'll get good candidates reaching out to you for an opportunity. So I think employee or employer branding becomes quite critical. Karo, since you have done recruitment for around 10 odd years now. Uh, Coming to my kind of my last question for this podcast is basically the theme of this podcast is what's next, right? You've seen SMB hiring, you've seen maybe larger corporates, you have done leadership hiring at startups, you have helped startups grow. So you have seen that entire kind of value chain of how a company needs to grow with the right team. Just wanted to get your thoughts on how will the recruitment space or the hiring space look in the next 3, 5, 10 years with obviously with technology coming in, as you mentioned, you rebranded last year with RecX and you bought in technology for scale. So it would be good to hear your thoughts on the future of recruitment.
So, I keep on getting, so many messages around AI, and there are so many reels which are going viral around AI as well. So AI killing jobs and all those jazz is happening. But, how I see it as AI will create more and more jobs in the future. Okay. So when you talk about this is just a transition phase, right? Wherein people are adapting AI, they are understanding what are the capabilities, what artificial intelligence can develop, and all those things as well. How it will go is in future, if you know AI, it will be an added feather on your cap. You can demand more and more packages, your salaries will shoot up only if you know that skill. Because if you see even chat gpt, which is the most utilized tool for AI, that is being managed based on prompts. Now, one simple question: who will give this prompts? You will need a human being to give that prompt, right? So that's where I always say AI will definitely be managed by an enabler. That enabler are human beings. So in future, if you talk about recruitment or any other industry, that is one pertinent skill, a very, very critical skill to employ. And second is always start thinking like a CXO. So what actually happens for a junior level or cadre candidate or even mid segment folks, they keep themselves very limited to their own domain, right? Till the time you do not get into the shoes of the CXO to understand that, as CXO is having too many departments to manage, right? And too many things going on in his head. So till the time you do that kind of a transition and in the mindset, in your working process, and show that you are truly valuable to the organization, your contribution should be clearly visible. So if you attain that status, right? So I'm pretty sure finding a job is a cakewalk, right? So it is not important that they figure out your value, but ultimately you driving value, you contributing to the organization, it automatically comes into visibility, right?
Got it.
These are sort of my 2 cents on the future.
Got it, Gaurav. Interesting points again. I think everybody's talking AI, everybody's talking chat GPT is going to take over. So my thoughts are, I mean, the same thing happened when the calculator came in, when the computers came in, that it's going to take away all our jobs. But it actually, as you said, these are all enablers to do better work, right? I think you can use technology to improve your own skills first. At the same time, it elevates you to do more maybe high level thinking jobs. So I think on that note, Gaurav, I think some very interesting points. I hope the listeners take away some learnings out of this. Gaurav, once again, thank you for being part of What's Next with We on a Sunday. So it was great to have you and great to have this chat.
Thank you so much, Vishal. You guys are doing an amazing job. And
Thank
guys,
you.
do stay tuned to his channel. He is already doing a wonderful job. Thank you so much.